meaning having a crystal clear vision of where you're going, right? A lot of times we admire people for their strategy, but a strategy can only be as clear as the vision that it is pursuing. And a lot of us have an ambiguous strategy right now. Like, we lack focus. And the reason why we lack focus isn't because we don't know what we could do or what we should do right now. It's just that we don't have any clue where we're going.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nick Carrier's Best You podcast. I am super excited today because we got a really special episode with Alex Judd, and we're here at Ramsey Solutions in the EntreLeadership studio. So, in a really cool studio, not just in my bedroom. So, a really special episode today. So, I just want to start off by saying, Alex, thanks for having me, and thanks for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here, Nick. We're excited about this.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun. So, Alex is a business coach with Ramsey Solutions, which is a Dave Ramsey company, or has been a business coach as well. And he's currently the host of the EntreLeadership Podcast, which exists to help leaders, entrepreneurs, and small businesses win and get ahead and everything like that. And I love the podcast. I've been listening to it a lot here the last month or two to help myself and my own business and help myself thrive.
That's awesome.
Thanks for all the great messages there. And we're going to get a little bit into the background, but first I want to start off by, you started as the host back in August last year, right? Mm-hmm. So relatively new at it. What, since August, has been the biggest lesson that you've taken and then started to apply in your life over these last number of months?
Since starting interviewing people?
Yeah, since starting interviewing, since starting being the podcast host.
That's a really good question. First of all, I'm super grateful to do this. I'm really excited about this. I think whenever I started in August, quite frankly, I was a little bit in awe of the people that I was, quote unquote, getting paid to talk to, right? Like, I would pay to talk to these people. Right. So the fact that I'm getting paid is insane. And so to a degree, a little bit, I was having like fanboy moments every single week as we were recording these conversations, because these are like my heroes from the business and leadership world. But as that kind of calmed down a little bit and I started to realize, like, okay, you can hang with these people, you can have a conversation, I think there were probably two things that really, really started to stand out as being trends and themes from everyone that I was talking to. And we talked to high-performing CEOs, we talked to entrepreneurs, we talked to world-class authors and thought leaders. And I think the two things that really started to stand out is that, number one, they were all remarkably different, like personality-wise. They all expressed their personality and communication style and did all of these different things in very, very different ways. But I think especially the interviews that we've done that have been exceptional, the thing that stands out is that they are all world-class experts at being themselves. Mm-hmm. And that power of authenticity has just hit home over and over and over again. I think today, like you and I, young people, we've got BS meters like nobody's business, right? Because we live in a marketing world where everyone's trying to sell something at us. And it seems like the people that are winning are the people that we can trust to be authentic. So that was number one. And then the second one is just like the theme is dogged persistence, man. Like, every single one of them have encountered obstacles, have encountered challenges, have hit a blocker en route to pursuing their dream, and they just were the people that kept going.
Yeah.
And
well,
go ahead.
No, yeah. So I wanted to, I was going to go back into your personal life from here, but I'm going to wait because now I'm just intrigued on these two things. So authenticity is the first thing that you said.
Yeah.
Everybody is a master at being themselves. And I think that's a kind of a thing that takes a lot of time and a lot of experience. Yeah. But what are some things that we can do like now early on in our lives to try to like speed up that process or try to make sure that process happens in the best way possible, I guess?
Yeah, man, I don't know that I'm the expert to be able to answer this question. It's such a weird paradox in that the harder you try to be yourself, the worse you become sometimes. And sometimes it's like the people that I look up to most are the ones that just have a really loose grip, and almost it's like their posture is a posture of surrender. There was a guy that spoke at our summit event. It was probably about 2 or 3 years ago. His name's Alan Mulally. I don't know if you know that name. He was the CEO that turned around Ford. Ford was losing billions, on pace to losing trillions of dollars a year. And he was a CEO at Boeing. Boeing was excelling. It was I mean, it was doing really, really well. And he stepped into Ford and said, I'm going to turn this thing around, just because he felt like Ford was an American icon. Like, it felt like it was a brand he wanted to turn around. Well, he came and spoke at our conference, and we were wondering, like, is this guy going to appeal to small business owners? Because he's a multi-billion-dollar CEO. Like, is the owner with 10 team members going to be able to connect with this guy? And we were really concerned about that. And he gets on stage, and I kid you not, he was the most relatable person on a stage probably that I've ever seen. Like, he was so likable, and you just realized, and I think I've learned this from Dave too, and working with him, he was just so comfortable in being in his own skin. And he had done the hard work of knowing his leadership style, and he wasn't getting on that stage trying to impress anyone or trying to prove anything. Talk about someone that has nothing to prove. And it was like, I'm going to tell you what I know. And he literally said, everything I know is on one slide. And everyone kind of laughed. And he's like, you think I'm joking, but here's the slide. And he was like, everything that I know is on this slide. And he was so chill. And I watched the room respond to that. He was not the greatest communicator in the world. He was not super polished or flashy or anything like that. The room was in the palm of his hand. And it was because they trusted him. And so I think the first thing I would say is, like, start to have a loose grip on needing to prove anything to anyone or needing to impress anyone, and start to do the hard work of just saying, who am I? And then live out of that place. And whether people are like it or not is not the outcome that you're looking for. It's, are you being aligned with, to your point, the best version of who you feel you are called to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. I like what you said to kind of start it off when you said that the harder you work at it, sometimes the harder it is to actually be authentic.
I'm trying so hard to be myself right now. It's
right?
like that's pretty tough. You know?
Exactly. And so I interviewed a real estate agent, and one of the things that he said when he started to brand himself that he did really well was making sure that he branded himself, like on social media and these outlets, as authentically himself. Because if he started acting as in a way that wasn't truly himself, you can't really hold that. You can't hold those actions for a long period of time. And he was like, if I show that I am a hustler on the weekends, but like I don't really actually always hustle on the weekends, then a Saturday is going to come up and somebody's going to ask me to show them a house, and I'm not going to actually follow through with that. So you have to kind of brand yourself authentically so that you can stay with that. Stay true to yourself.
That's a really good thought. I was writing about this the other morning. I was thinking about the fact that you'll hear that phrase a lot of times, and a lot of times this is used in the business world of no one expects you to be perfect. And sometimes that's not true. Sometimes there are people that expect you to be perfect, but the only reason why they expect you to be perfect is because you've taught them to expect that. Right? Because like I will try so hard to portray the image of someone that is quote unquote perfect because I want to hide my mistakes. I want to hide my flaws. I want to hide my vulnerabilities. And so the only reason why they expect me to be perfect is because I've taught them that expectation. But then one day, right, we always teach here that dissonance is created when expectations do not align with reality. And one day, if they are expecting perfection because I've taught them to expect that, and then I slip up and there's no way to cover it up, that's going to be a really tough day for them and a really tough day for me. But ultimately, that's not their fault. That's mine. Because I've portrayed a brand and an image that is in no way aligned with who I actually am, which is an imperfect human being.
Yeah, I love that phrase. Dissonance is created when expectation doesn't match reality. And I just heard a quote, I think yesterday, that an expectation that is not communicated is just a thought. And it can't stay a thought. I want to go back to him as a speaker real quick. That you said he was really relatable and really likable. And I think that's kind of a big thing, a commonly used phrase with people on social media and just kind of like personalities in general.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that they're relatable. So what were the things that maybe he was saying or the things that he was communicating that made him relatable to the audience? Was it he was talking about his struggles, or what were those things that he was communicating?
That's a really good question. I haven't thought super intensely about that. I think he didn't have a ton to prove, and I think what made that stand out is like his presentation wasn't ultra polished. Like he was saying and every once in a while, but he was speaking from his experience. And because he was speaking from his experience and he was telling where he had failed and where he had messed up, people people admire us for our achievements. They connect with our imperfections. And he knew that, right? And he was going to communicate about his imperfections. The same thing goes for Dave here, right? He is now a multi-million-dollar CEO that talks to a bunch of people that are really in debt. And the reason why they talk to him is because they find him relatable. Like, he's a multimillionaire, but the reason why they find him relatable is because he talks about the story of when he was broke. And he talks about the mistakes that he made. And he talks about the areas where he fell into a pit and screwed up. And he says, I've done stupid. I have a PhD in DUMB, right? But people connect with that stuff. And I think the same was true for Alan. Like, I left that conversation with Alan Mulally. I came into it thinking, like, this guy's going to be really impressive. He's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. He's responsible for so many people. He turned around one of the most iconic brands in the world. And I left thinking, like, oh my gosh, he's kind of a normal guy. And you know how much hope that gave me?
Right.
Because it's like, oh my gosh, well, if he's a normal guy, if he's a superhero, then I will have left thinking, man, that Alan is so amazing. But if he's a normal guy, then I'm like, well, what could I do? Because I'm a normal guy. And if he's a normal guy and he did that, so I think it's just like he highlighted the fact that he was human. And whenever you're on a stage in front of 4,000 people and you've got lights shining on you and you've got these massive screens with your face on it, all that is working against you coming across as human, right? Because it literally portrays you as superhuman. And he just took like 20,000 steps backward and just said, I'm a human being just like you. And this is what I did. And it kind of worked out for me. I'd say so. And so you can do this as well.
Yeah, I really like that. He, like you said, he just portrayed essentially everything wrapped up. It portrayed that he's human and portrayed that he has his flaws and everything like that. And so I really like sticking on this topic because I think a lot of times, like, a very common question that people might ask you is like, what are the similarities that people have that come onto your show? But it's like, what allows them to have that similarity? So like, that's why I asked the question of like, how can we be authentic? Because we're looking for a similarity amongst them all. And then we're trying to figure out how can we be that way? So that deeper question of why they're that way or how they got that way, I think is really important. And so the second one you said is they have a dogged persistence. Yeah. They're super hardworking. So what do you think allows people to just like keep going on the grind despite like it seeming like their goals are so far away? Like, what is the thing that you think allows people to gain persistence?
Single-mindedness. I think that's something that I've tried to take from the people that I get to talk to and apply to my own life.
Meaning
having a crystal clear vision of where you're going, right? A lot of times we admire people for their strategy, but a strategy can only be as clear as the vision that it is pursuing. And a lot of us have an ambiguous strategy right now. Like, we lack focus. And the reason why we lack focus isn't because we don't know what we could do or what we should do right now. It's just that we don't have any clue where we're going, right? If I tell you, hey, let's go on a trip, well, where do you want to go? To the Northeast. There's a billion different ways to get to the Northeast. If I say I want to go to 6th Street in New York City, there's one pretty clear way to get there. Yeah. And like, honestly, I took that recognition from all of those people that I've gotten to talk with and interview and realize they've got dogged persistence, and that's related to them having a clear, single-minded vision. And I applied that to my career, and I said, I need to have a clear, single-minded vision. And it was in that realization that I started telling myself and telling people that my vision for my career is I want to communicate, teach, write, lead, and work with people and make a living doing it. Right? That became my vision. And then, like, if that's the vision, the strategy is just like, okay, what do we need to do to get there?
Yeah.
And hurdles, of course they're going to happen. Obstacles, of course you're going to hit them. Politics and drama and step backs and pitfalls, yes, of course, right? It's expected. And so when you hit those things, like, well, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen, but the vision isn't changing, right? The vision is immovable. The strategy is movable and adaptable.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know, do you know who Rory Vaden is?
Yes, and he lives in this area, right?
He does. And he said, I heard him on a podcast not too long ago, and he talked about that exact same thing. He said that a lot of people think that we struggle from a lack of discipline, when in reality we struggle from a lack of vision. And the amount of the endurance that you have with your discipline is directly related to the amount of vision or the clarity of vision that you actually have. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, I was talking to a group of people this weekend, and we talk a lot about discipline, right, as being this thing that we all want, and we should all want discipline, right? There's something very, very powerful, and that's something uniquely that human beings have that dogs and chimpanzees and cats don't, right? They're not going to apply themselves to a long-term plan. They're just going to go eat their food and sleep, right? We can apply ourselves to a long-term plan. I think discipline gets you started. Habits keep you going. And so, like, do you brush your teeth every night?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank goodness, Nick.
Yeah. Put me on the spot there.
Yeah, that's right. Thank goodness you didn't say no to that question. So when you tell me you brush your teeth every night, I don't look at you and say, man, that Nick, that guy is disciplined.
Right.
That guy, and you don't look in the mirror brushing your teeth and you say, I'm in the grind right now, right? This is it. This is discipline. No, you brush your teeth because that's what people like you do, right? And so, yes, probably as a kid, you probably had to build that discipline, and your parents probably built that discipline for you by disciplining you to brush your teeth. But now it's habit. And the same thing is true for us as high-performing human beings, is that we need to start with the discipline and say, okay, I'm going to apply myself to this thing. But after you apply yourself and you exert your will on a thing over an extended period of time, it's not like for the rest of your life it's going to take an insane amount of discipline to start thinking and doing certain things. It's habit. It becomes like brushing your teeth, and that's a powerful day.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing, and I hadn't really necessarily thought about it exactly like that. Like, the amount of energy that you have to put to discipline yourself to do something decreases when it becomes a habit. Like, you still have to I have to brush my teeth, but you don't have to put that much energy towards doing it. You'll follow through with it.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
It's such a habit. So now let's get back a little bit into
okay,
you.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you graduated from University of Texas in 2014. Hook 'em horns. So we've talked a little bit about clarity of vision, and you majored in corporate communications.
Yeah, you've done your research, man.
Of course.
I don't know that I would have been able to answer that question, so that's good that you knew that.
And I think a lot of people out of high school, out of college, and further on, suffer from clarity of vision. So when you were graduating from University of Texas, what did your future look like in your eyes? Like, did you have a clear idea of kind of where you wanted to start and where you wanted to go? And then after that question, kind of like, what was your first thing out of college?
That's a really good question. It's one of those things that I think it was kind of always in the back of my head, and I'm not positive. I think that is true for everyone, whether they know it or not, that there is something in their heart and something in their head that it's not necessarily a career path that they're thinking of, but they know what they love.
Yeah.
And I remember in second grade, I was sitting in my parents' bedroom as my mom was folding laundry, and I was sitting on the floor, and I remember looking at her and telling her, I think it'd be cool one day, I don't want to be a motivational speaker, but I think it would be cool one day to be a motivational teacher. Second freaking grade. What on earth? Yeah.
If I was a parent, I'd be like, who is this guy?
I think she legitimately said, well, you should go do something, Alex.
Did you actually say those words? Motivational?
I said not motivational speaker. And the reason why I didn't want to be a motivational speaker is because I felt like that was cheesy.
Yeah.
But I said, I think a teacher that actually gives people the ability to do something, I was like, that's cool. It's what on earth? Crazy. And my mom, she told me recently, she's like, I remember that. She's like, I remember you saying that. And she's like, the first thought that went through my head is all those motivational speakers and teachers out there that it's they had their legs chopped off or something. And that's what made it. And she's like, what is this kid going to go through? Oh my gosh, she's going to have some traumatic experience. But all that to say, I think it was there. I think it was there a long, long time ago. And I think for everyone, I am of the belief that we are all wired to do something, right? And we have passions and gifts, and we have things that we love and that we know make us come alive. And some of those are meant to be hobbies. Some of those are meant to serve people. Actually, I would take that back. I believe every single gift is meant to serve people. And so I kind of knew that in the back of my head. That kind of goes underground and goes away for a little bit. It was always in the back of my head, to the point where it's anytime we'd have a seminar at school or anytime I'd see a professor give a presentation, in the back of my head, I'm always thinking about how could I do this better?
Yeah.
But I would never tell anyone that. And I think that's a lot of us. We have a dream. The question is, do we have the courage to start telling people that dream? And I would say I probably went, it was probably 15 15 to 18 years before I worked at that Courage. I wasn't telling anyone about it. So then in college, my strategy was I truly can't, I'm really nerdy. And I came up with a strategy in college that my strategy for where I was going to be, I'm going to love what I do. I'm going to be really stinking good at it. And I'm never going to close myself off to opportunity. Love what you do. Where you are today, not because I would see all these people that it's like they were becoming a biochemical engineer, but they hated their biochemical engineering classes. And it's like that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you don't love it right now, what makes you think you're going to love it just because you're getting paid $100,000 to do it? I don't think that works. So I'm going to love what I do. I'm going to do it really stinking well because that's going to create a path, and I'm never going to close myself off to opportunity. That was the vision at that point. And then out of college, like that landed me doing some leadership development stuff and speaking stuff. So I think that was the extent of the vision at that time, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I really liked when you said when you watched your teachers or when you watched other people, you would think to yourself, how could I do that better? Mm-hmm. And I think that like if people are self-aware enough, I think a lot of people ask themselves that question when they're watching their passion, but they don't necessarily know what their passion is. Mm-hmm. But I think that like if you ever find yourself doing that subconsciously, be like, maybe that's the thing I should go pursue and go learn more about and dive into a little bit.
I hate watching basketball, right? I won't do it. I don't even find myself watching basketball unless I don't even get started on professional baseball, right? I just don't, like, I will play those, but I don't watch them. And it's because like, I'm not interested in getting better. I'm not even decent at those things. And so it's like my mind is not engaged by watching those things. Now, the people that I know that love playing basketball, mm-hmm. a lot of times they also love watching basketball because they're doing exactly what you're talking about. That's a passion that they have, and they're watching, how could I take from this?
Yeah, I think that's such a eye-opening thing to me because I know I do that too with some things, and I'm like, I could be doing that better, or how could I do that better? That sort of thing. All right, so you basically ended up finding your way as a business coach here at EntreLeadership back in 2016.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
yep.
Awesome, gotcha. So early on, maybe what were some of those things as a coach that you felt there was like a gap between knowledge and being able to help others? Was there anything that, like any piece of knowledge that you had to gain from experience or that you had to gain from a mentor that really helped you excel and get to the next level in terms of being a good coach?
Yeah. I had the perception when I got here that if you're going to be a coach, it means that you're going to have all the answers. And in reality, being a good coach means you know when and how to ask the right questions. And because a good coach pulls what is already inside of you out of you and gets you to buy in to the next step, right? And so we've all had teachers that tell us what we need to do next, right? And to varying degrees of success, depending on how persuasive the teacher is. That's not what a coach is designed to do. The coach is designed to put you in a position where you bring the best out of yourself and then just provides those guidelines along the way. But I'll tell you, like whenever I would get on coaching calls, whenever I first started, it was like a lecture, right? Because I felt like I had to have all the answers and like I needed to present to these people. I needed to perform for these people. I needed to impress these people. And it was probably about a year in that someone gave me the advice. It's exactly what we talked about at the beginning. They're like, loosen the grip, just calm down a little bit. It's gonna be okay. Maybe have 3 cups fewer of coffee every morning, right? And they just said, just let the game come to you, and just be intentional about listening to what the person is saying. And when a person says, like, I was on a coaching call the other day, and someone like was going through this problem and like they were talking about it super logically, and it was this pretty type A personality CEO, and he has a team of I think like 20 or 25 people, and he was going through the problem super type A, and then he said something and breezed past it, and he said like, I'm just terrified about the fact that it could do this. And I just stopped him real quick and I said, you just said the word terrified. What does that mean? And he paused, and it was like the tone of the conversation changed, because terrified conveys emotion. It doesn't convey logic. And he said, he's like, I think I've been scared about if I make this decision, what are the ramifications of it for me, but also for other people. And the entire conversation changed. And it had nothing to do with what I told him. It just had everything to do with listening and then saying, hey, did you realize you just said this? I think that's the biggest thing I've learned.
Yeah, I think asking the right questions is super important, but you have to like come from the place of like humility, realizing you don't have all the answers. And I feel like that kind of goes back to what you were talking about with the speaker Alan Mulally.
Yeah.
And it makes you relatable, because I think that people don't always expect you to have all the answers. I think sometimes they're okay to be willing to work through and find a solution with you.
Yeah.
And then that way they take more ownership for the actual solution themselves anyway.
Yeah, I was talking to a client that I've worked with for a very long time now, probably 2 or 3 years, and she told me the other day, she's like, Alex, I'll be quite honest with you. When I connected with you initially, my first thought, because we do video calls, she's in Montana, and she said, my first thought was, I think my business is older than my coach. And the crazy thing is she was right.
Yeah.
And so she was like, what is this? And now we have this unbelievable friendship. We also have this unbelievable working relationship, but that did not come, to your point, from me knowing all the answers.
Right.
It just came from me being able to listen and mirror back to her what she was saying so that she can figure out the solutions that were already inside of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're talking to a lot of different leaders with people, and I think like communication is one huge overarching skill that all leaders need to try to develop. What have you found through conversations with these leaders from either podcasting or from the coaching calls and stuff like that, how they can best find the way to make their employees tick and the other people around them tick? Like, what kinds of conversations do they have with the people that work under them? What kind of conversations do they have with the people that work around them? Or maybe what questions do they ask them?
That's a good question. I can speak to what I've seen works here and works with the small business owners that we serve around the country, I guess. And then honestly, though, I think this is a personal development thing too. This is something that I focus on a lot as well, is and it ties again back to your first question, if you as an individual can answer the questions, why do I exist, where am I going, and what do I stand for? Why do I exist, where am I going, what do I stand for? And then you communicate in alignment with those 3 things repeatedly and consistently, people start to respond to that. And especially in an organizational context, if you get crystal clear on why do we exist, where are we going, and what do we stand for, we call those mission, vision, and values here, but you can also have them personally, then the message that you are sending to everyone in the building, whether it's 900 people like where we are now or whether it's 5 people in a startup operation, is people like us do things like this. That's a Seth Godin line. And that's a powerful day, because if you think about any of the great sports teams you've been a part of, or the great organizations or the great projects you've ever worked on, there was a culture, there was a shared values and behaviors where it wasn't like it was like some huge effort to get everyone on the same page. It's just like, no, we trust each other because people like us do things like this. And so I guess from a communication perspective is figure out, why do we exist? Where are we going? What do we stand for? And then talk about those 3 things over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to what you're talking about in terms of clarifying expectations, because I think if you lay out those 3 things, mission, vision, and values, then people kind of know what the expectation is. And when they have a clear vision of what the expectation is, then they can better grasp what they need to do, what actions they need to take in order to align with that. And it's really funny, sticking with this expectations things, I interviewed Stephen M.R. Covey, the son of Stephen Covey.
How is that? Habits. Pretty awesome?
Yeah, he's awesome. Awesome guy. He's author of the book called The Speed of Trust. And he talks about a story with his son about clarifying expectations. So like his son, they're like, your driver's license is not right. It's a privilege, right? And so if you do something wrong, you're going to get the driver's license taken away. That expectation was laid out there for them. And then he got like this excessive speeding ticket, and he took his driver's license away because he had to follow through with the expectation. And because he had led with the expectation, the son just sees it as something that should happen as the result of what he did, rather than his father being like a mean person. And so I feel like that goes to, like, as a leader, clarify the expectation, because then if someone doesn't meet it, then they don't see it as like, this is a mean boss, this is a mean leader. They see it as, I just didn't follow through. And I think that gap is huge.
Yeah, I do triathlons, and my first Ironman that I ever did, I'm so thankful someone gave me this advice. It was probably about 3 weeks before the race, and they said, Alex, just know what you're getting yourself into, which you've done your training. You've been training for 9 months. You're ready for this, but you should go into the race with plan A, plan B, and plan C. You have to be absolutely prepared and planned out, but then you should go in on race day, and before you get in the water, you should set the expectation that all those plans are going to fail. And that is exactly what happened, right? Like on the bike, I had my tire pop and had to sit on the side of the road because my wrench had fallen on the ground. And so I had to wait for a wrench, and I was sitting in the sun, and then I was getting dehydrated. And then we start the run, and literally torrential thunderstorms, like water up to my ankles, like they'd never seen before. There was a tornado warning in the area. And there were people around me whenever it was raining that were losing it, right? Like they were freaking out because it's like everything's gone off plan, right? This is horrible. And they were complaining, and triathletes can be kind of high maintenance as it is, and they were just losing it. And I was sitting there, I was like, this is exactly what I expected, right? And so because it aligned with my expectations, I was able to mentally perform better. And so I think that goes set the expectation properly, and then make sure that you should go into situations, especially if it's a worthwhile pursuit, go into situations expecting that it's going to go nothing like you planned, because then when it doesn't, it's exactly what you expected.
Yeah. And don't want to keep bringing up people I've interviewed, but another person I interviewed was a sports agent, and she said that she was a sports agent for a lot of people, but Billy Horschel, the golfer, was one of her clients. And she said that Tiger Woods gave him a piece of advice that, yes, you need to visualize success, but you also need to visualize failure so you can know how you respond after visualizing it. So you need to visualize yourself missing that putt and then striping a drive right down the middle of the fairway. So I think that's kind of just goes to the expectation thing.
And that seems almost a little bit counterintuitive too.
Right.
You're going to visualize missing the hole.
Yeah.
But
I feel like there's definitely a balance. You probably don't want to do that too much.
Tiger Woods has way more credibility talking about that now than he did about 2 years ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. So I want to get into a few more things about you. Yeah. I think that a lot of us make decisions. The decisions we make in time, hoping for the best in the future. But I want to ask you, is there a most important decision that you've made professionally up to this point in your life that was super important, but you didn't realize the significance of it at the time?
Is there a decision that I've made in my professional career that was important, but I didn't realize the significance of it at the time? That's the question.
Correct.
I think we talked a little bit about it earlier, having the courage to start saying what my dream and vision for my career was. I was sitting down with someone, and it was kind of a mentor type person for me, and they cast this vision of a future for me. This was a handful of years ago, and they were being hyper encouraging, and they were saying, Alex, the sky's the limit. But what they described as the vision of the future for me, that they were trying to get me bought into, was more of a corporate oriented role that a lot of people out there would be tremendously excited about. And I just realized, I was like, that's awesome, but I feel nothing right now. And it was in that moment that I had the courage to look in the mirror finally and say, the thing that I actually get excited about, and the thing that I actually would absolutely love to do with my career, and I wasn't doing it up to that point, was to communicate, teach, write, lead, and work with people and make a living doing it. And when I said okay, people may laugh at you when you say that, but I'm going to start saying it. I had no idea the ramifications that would have for my life moving forward. And I am so unbelievably grateful that I had that recognition at 25. But what I've realized is the best time to have that recognition of what is your passion, and then have the courage to start telling people and then live in alignment with what you're telling people. Like the best time to start doing that was yesterday, right? Yeah. Second best option is right now.
Yeah.
And so make that decision, figure out what that is. And that's hard work that demands other people in the conversation, but then start telling people about it and then start living in alignment with it.
I love that. I love it. So we've talked in the past, you have this thing that you've done, I think the last 3 years called 5 by 5.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Right?
Yes. 5 at 5.
5 at 5, 5 at 5, 5 miles every single morning.
So it's
weekdays.
It's in January. It's 5 miles at 5 a.m. every day except Sunday.
Okay. Gotcha. So what sparked you to do that initially?
Oh man, it was late December, whatever it was, 3 years ago. This is year 4 right now. We're in the middle of it. And I was in Houston running where I grew up running in Clear Lake, just south of Houston. And I literally don't know. I like, it felt like a God thing at the moment where it was like I was running and I was like, what about 5 miles at 5 a.m.? And then it was like, what if you did it every day? Well, every day is kind of stupid. So what if you just did what the Bible says and took a break on Sunday? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. And the first year was amazing. It was horrible, but amazing at the same time. And so I've continued to do it ever since. What's
the biggest thing that you think you've learned about yourself through doing that over the last 3.5 years? Oh, almost 4 years now.
Oh, man, there's so much.
Anything that's new this year?
Yeah, absolutely there is. This year, I've learned that I have to show myself grace. This year specifically, this January has been the most unpredictable and a little bit wild in terms of schedule and travel. And there's times where, and part of and we can talk about this more later if you want to, but one of my words for the year is cheerful. And as part of that, like what is the action that supports being more cheerful is prioritizing people. And so there's been some nights where it's like, I'm getting to spend time with someone that I haven't seen for years, and they're leaving town tomorrow, and I have to choose between, okay, am I going to go to bed early and wake up for 5 at 5, or am I going to prioritize people and like not do 5 at 5 in the morning? And I hate saying no to 5 at 5, not because like I hate it because I know I'm going to have to tell people about it. Right. And then I realized like, okay, number one, you can make up this day in February. Number two, you said you're going to prioritize people, and sometimes you have to make trade-offs. And number three, you do have a priority called work that you have to show up for, and you can't sacrifice that because you're committed to that and they're paying you to do a good job there. And so there's been, I think, 2 or 3 mornings this month where I've had to make those trade-offs and had to say like, I can't do it this morning, but I'll figure out a way to make it up or something like that. And I didn't die.
Yeah, right.
Like nothing happened. It turns out people still respect me.
Yeah.
And what I realized is like, okay, the only person that's putting pressure on you to do this every single morning is you. And that's great pressure, right? And it's a great goal, and you should pursue that goal, and you should hustle, and you should push yourself. But if you're getting to a spot where you're about to get sick because you're waking up early to do some made up thing from 4 years ago, dude, like, let's figure this out. And or if you're sacrificing relationships or work to meet, like, that wasn't ever the goal. The goal was to wake up early, to get closer to God, to get deeper in prayer time, to keep myself physically healthy and to set the tone for the year. And if I miss one day, I can absolutely still achieve that goal. That's been really hard to learn.
Yeah, I think that last part, I really like how you added that at the end. I think that when you set a goal, what you have to be also thinking is like, what's the result I want from doing this?
Yeah.
Rather than just like, and that's when you can evaluate whether or not I need to stick on the exact plan that I had for myself.
Yes.
Because like when you set the goal, you have a good amount of perspective, but that once you're actually amidst the process of attacking the goal, your perspective can change, but you have to ask yourself, what's the result I'm going for? Is this action still going to align me to get to that result? And so you can still not miss. You can miss one. That's really important. But then like kind of what you were saying earlier on, like if you didn't do it one morning, nothing was essentially going to happen. Like, not to say that it wasn't a big deal and that people don't care, but like at the end of the day, people don't care. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's, and I don't say that in like a cynical way. I say that, and
well, credit to you too. I have not shared this with anyone up until this conversation, and so I'm hoping no one listens to this, and then I won't have to live with this. But I mean that, like, honestly, and it's good for me to share that too. We were talking about relatability earlier, right? The thing that I struggle with is if I spend all my time trying to impress people, they will be extremely impressed and not at all connected to me, and that's not my goal. Right? My goal is to be someone that people feel connected to, that they can look into the eyes and that they can share about where they've struggled and they failed. And if I'm not willing to do that on my own, then I'll never have that with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the being okay to admit that, admit that is like a selfless thing, because I think it's almost selfish to think that like it's that big a deal that everybody's going to notice if you don't do it one day or something like that. And that's kind of, as you know, I'm trying to get a sub 5 minute mile as a current goal of mine. And when I developed like a small, like on the bruise on my foot or whatever, I was like, oh man, everybody's going to notice. And I was like, Nick, get out of your own head. Yeah. Nobody's going to care. Like, people are going to ask you like, where are you at? But like at the end of the day, nobody's going to care.
That's the greatest. Anytime I've decided to take a month or 2 months off social media, the greatest recognition every single time I've done it is like, no one misses me. The world keeps moving on. It's like, wow, like maybe I should just go live in a monastery and just disappear off the face of the earth. Because it's like, it doesn't actually matter that much. But then we can probably start to focus on what's actually important and what's actually contributing to other people.
Yeah. I think it's an important thing to distinguish that, like, people, you don't want to get to the point where it's like people don't notice, so it doesn't matter, so nothing I do matters.
Yeah.
Like, that's
apathy is not the answer.
Yeah. You have to still like realize that you can have an impact during doing what you're doing, but I don't really know where I wanted to go.
I think I heard a quote that said the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy, right? And it's like when we decide to stop caring, that's when things get really nasty. And we can see examples of that in the world today, right? People stop caring. And it's like when they stop caring, really bad things happen. I would rather have a divided country than an apathetic country, because the conversation we're having right now is about two groups of people, or maybe it's multiple groups of people, it's a spectrum, but that are extremely passionate about a vision that they have for the country that they live in. I would way rather have people who are passionate about a vision for the future than people who are apathetic.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important too. So down to the last couple of questions. So we've talked a lot about vision, and so essentially these are going to be related to that. So one of the questions that I've started to recently ask myself over the last few months that I've found has been really important is going to be this one coming right up. And is there a skill or a piece of knowledge that the best version of yourself possesses that you don't currently possess?
The best version of myself possesses, but I don't currently possess. I think the best version of myself really stops giving a crap what other people think. And just like, well, I guess the one caveat I would provide there, maybe I care about what the right people think. Because I think maybe a selfish approach that is taken a lot today culturally is just forget about all other people. And it's like, well, I believe I'm responsible to other people, right? I believe I'm here to contribute and to serve, and it's not to serve me, it's to serve other people. And so that kind of demands caring a little bit about what the right people think. But I'm here to serve the right people, and I need to be about the business of doing that in the highest and best way possible. And if I'm doing that in the highest and best way possible, then quite frankly, the other people's opinions really don't matter, because I'm not here to cater to opinions. I'm here to cater to purpose. And I need to be about the business of pursuing that purpose and let all the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. And so I was having this exact conversation with somebody last Wednesday over coffee. And we talked about exactly what you just said. Like, don't care what people think, but at the same time, there's got to be a line drawn between like the right people, and I kind of want to discuss like where that line is before I get into the last question, because I haven't thought enough about it to think about exactly like kind of like philosophically what that line should be. But there is people who kind of take it too far to where like you can't go. You can go too far with saying don't give a crap what other people think, because you are responsible for other people. So where do you feel like that line is drawn between like who the right people are and how much we should care?
The thing, as you were asking that, I've wrestled with this a lot as well. The thing that came to mind, have you ever read a book called The Road to Character by David Brooks? A phenomenal book. That book and his other book, the follow-up book to it, is called The Second Mountain. Those two books rocked my world in so many ways. And one of the things he talks about at the beginning of The Road to Character is the difference between resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And we spend so much time, energy, effort, manpower, money chasing resume virtues, right? Which these are the things that show up on a resume, right? And it's equated to positional authority, status, influence, net worth, all these things that a lot of us spend a large portion of our career and as a result our life chasing. And he says, but it's funny that no one in your eulogy will ever talk about your net worth, your position, your status, or your influence. In your eulogy, they'll talk about your humility, your loyalty, your character, right? And all the things your generosity, all the things that made up those things. And so the reason why I bring that up in this context is the people that I focus on their opinion are going to be the ones that are there for my eulogy, not the ones who are evaluating my resume. And so I want the people who are there for my eulogy to think the world of me. And I want them to think that because of the impact that I've made on them. The resume, hopefully that'll just take care of itself.
Yeah.
But it's really easy. I mean, to say that that's figured out, I think that's a tug of war every day, right? Between resume and eulogy. And we've seen people that go all in on eulogy and just completely abandon the resume. And a lot of times those people end up not being very productive. But then we've also all seen the cases, and a lot of times these are on the news, of people that go entirely put all their chips in resume and they end up empty and lonely at the end of their life. And so, man, that's a tough line to walk.
Yeah, no, I really like that distinction a lot. Well, before I ask the last question, I want to acknowledge you for your thoughtfulness first off, because I think that you can tell that anybody listening can tell that you're such a deep thinker.
Well,
and
I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Well, I mean, sometimes you can think too much what you're thinking about, I think, and get in your own head, and it can hold you back. But I think there are numerous times today where someone who doesn't have confidence in themselves, when I would ask a question, if they don't have a immediate response, that they would kind of nervously go after it or nervously try to attempt it. And you could tell that you would take the time to really think about it and try to come up with a truly authentic response based off of your experiences. And I think that's something to be truly acknowledged because of your thoughtfulness and your confidence and the courage that you have about yourself.
That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I want to make sure everybody supports you and follows you as much as possible, because I know people are going to love this. So make sure you go listen to the EntreLeadership Podcast anywhere you can find podcasts. It's an awesome show. Have the best people on. I was just listening to the James Clear episode on habits.
That guy's amazing.
Guy's amazing. Where else can people go to find you and support you?
Yeah, EntreLeadership.com is for EntreLeadership if you want to go check that out. We exist to serve small business owners, so if you own a small business or want to own a small business, that would be a great place to go. And then I'm at Judd on the Run is my social media handles. That kind of makes it sound like I'm a convict that's on the run, but it's meant to refer just to I like to run a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the last question, I believe that chasing down the best version of ourselves is a constant journey, and I think it's a very unique journey.
Yeah.
I think the way that I'm going to become the best version of myself is going to be a little bit different than the way that you become the best version of yourself. So what I want to ask for you personally is if there are 3 things that you could currently do or currently work on to get closer to that best version of yourself, that best version of Alex Judd that you could be. What are those 3 things that you could currently do or currently work on?
First one will be what we just talked about, care about what the right people think. Second one would be have the discipline to show yourself grace. And third one would be let the game come to you.
Wow. Dude, thoughtful, deep thinker right there. That's how you finish it off. That's awesome.
Well, now I have to get to work. Golly. Nick, this was awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. You are world class in the way you ask questions. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate it, Alex. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Chief.